Okay, thanks very much for that generous and kind introduction, despite the snide remark about my university basketball team. Bobby Knight has long gone, by the way. Uh, yes, and since then, our fortunes have also declined. The future of the American-led global order. I will argue that it depends in large measure on three key pivots and three imponderables. Let me talk about the three pivots first. The first, of course, is that the future, it depends in large measure on the future course of American foreign policy. We have seen a re-engagement with the world under President Biden from this year onwards. On the other hand, we don't know who is going to be president in 2024. It's unclear that Biden is going to run, given his age. It's not clear what Democratic contenders there will be, and it's not clear what Republican frontrunner might emerge. If we have a Republican president in the mold of Donald Trump, one could again see a kind of disengagement with the world, which would have important consequences for the American-led global order, because Trump in many ways upset the apple cart in very significant ways. So that's the first pivot. The second is the continuing challenge of the PRC under Xi Jinping. And that challenge, I suspect, as long as Xi Jinping is at the helm and in decent health, will continue. And that will be an important challenge to the American-led global order, because Xi and his counterpart in Russia, Vladimir Putin, have a very different vision of world order. And they will continue to pose a significant challenge to the American-led global order. Third, I would argue that it also depends on how the EU, Japan, and others behave in the foreseeable future. In considerable part, it will depend on whether or not the EU remains firmly aligned with the United States, despite the kind of maltreatment that it endured under Trump. Japan did not face similar opprobrium under Trump, but nevertheless saw a bit of a rift in US-Japan relations. And much will depend on how these two entities can behave and respond to American initiatives. Let me now talk about three imponderables. The first is the possibilities of global economic recovery in the post-COVID-19 era. This remains quite uncertain because of the highly uneven responses to COVID-19 across the world and highly uneven recovery rates in different parts of the world. The United States, after a shambolic effort under Trump, under Biden has done remarkably well, and close to 45% of the total population at this point has been fully inoculated. The US is also anticipating a possible wave in the future because of the Delta variant, and is already now planning to carry out or planning to produce a booster vaccine, if necessary, this fall. The problem, of course, in the US lies primarily in the southern states, which have been significant laggards in terms of vaccine acceptance. And this remains a continuing problem in the United States. But I shouldn't dwell on the US alone. Any number of OECD countries, not to mention a host of developing countries, face significant challenges, and consequently, the possibilities of economic recovery remain quite fraught in the future. And this will affect the American global order, because so much of the American global order has to do with promoting greater economic integration, greater free trade, and the like. And in turn, this leads me to my second imponderable, that the the rates of recovery will also affect questions of trade, protectionism, and immigration, all of which are closely linked to the American-led global order. And these remain significant questions and uncertainties because we really don't know how economic recovery will proceed. And then finally, moving away from economics towards the end, much will also depend on a couple of American initiatives in the Middle East. The most important of which, of course, is the attempt to revise and revive the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Program of Action with Iran, which remains very much fraught with uncertainty at the moment, especially in light of the Iranian election. Some people are arguing that the hardline emergence of this hardline president in Iran might actually make it easier to reach an accord with the United States because he can protect himself from domestic flanks, from domestic criticism. On the other hand, a hardliner may drive for a very difficult bargain with the United States, which the US may not be able to deliver on. And in considerable part, peace and stability in the Middle East will depend upon the US reaching some kind of an accord or understanding, or at least the beginnings of reconciliation with Iran. And not in an entirely unrelated fashion, we will also have to watch very closely the future of the fragile Israeli coalition, which is composed of the most heterogeneous combination of parties and led by an extraordinary hardliner, Naftali Bennett, who is unalterably opposed to any revival of the JCPOA. And given the extraordinary strong relationship, the alliance that exists between the United States and Israel, the Biden administration will have to proceed with considerable care in terms of dealing with this heterogeneous coalition led by a hardliner in Israel, because that government led by Naftali Bennett could make life quite difficult for the United States in terms of proceeding forthwith with the JCPOA. The one other uncertainty that also exists in the Middle East, of course, is the future of Iraq. At the moment, matters don't seem especially dire, but all we need to see is yet another bombing in a market in Baghdad or another major city, and Iraq is again likely to come to the fore and again distract American attention away from its focus primarily on Iran at the moment. The Biden administration simply would not be able to stand by idly if Iraq again heads towards headlong towards destabilization. And not quite in the Middle East. I think it's really in South Asia, but on the fringes of the Middle East, of course, is the question of Afghanistan. It is more than apparent that Biden has no intentions of resiling from his plans to withdraw from Afghanistan, despite the dire predictions that a number of individuals who have made about the future of Afghanistan in the absence of a significant American military presence. And this again remains a source of considerable uncertainty. So to wrap up very quickly, there are three then key pivots and three major imponderables in terms of the future of the American-led global order. Thanks very much, Amit.